the groove. You're in the groove with America's Voice now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host. We're in our final segment for this Friday. We've got about a half hour. We're going to talk this segment about Marxist and fascist propaganda and how it is being practiced on us, on you, right now. It's being practiced on you not only by the media, but by the government itself. And those who are critical thinkers will understand and recognize how to, one, recognize it when they see it and when it's done to them, and interpret it so that you can avoid being, you see, you've heard people use the phrase, that guy's drinking the Kool-Aid. Well, that's a willing acceptance of propaganda, right? You've allowed yourself to be fooled. But when propaganda comes to you from the government and all the media sources out there, that's an injection. And it's not a willful, it's not a willful intake. There's a big difference. There's a gigantic difference. If I said to you, here's a drug that's going to injure you, and I want you to take it, and you refuse, and you crush that Dixie cup and throw it away, that's one thing. But if I take that same Dixie cup when you say no, and I insert it into a needle, and I inject it into your arm, that's a different story altogether. White House senior advisor Dan Pfeiffer, he used 3 vivid analogies the other day. Now, I love analogies. I just gave you one. He is calling House Republicans a laundry list of names. And that's because they have created a list of demands in order for them to raise the debt ceiling. Now, we know the debt ceiling is coming up. I know people are confused about the difference between a continuing resolution and a debt ceiling, and how does Obamacare get tied into both of those? I get it. By the way, this goes back to my earlier segment in segment 2, at the tail end of it, in the beginning of segment 3, where I said to you, that's the problem with America. We don't understand what's going on around us because we're not educating ourselves about it. Instead, we're filling our heads with garbage, sports scores, celebrity happenings. Stop dealing with all of that stuff, walk away from it, and educate yourself about what's happening around you that really, truly affects your life. The House Republicans have come out with a list of things that they want to see if they're going to extend and allow the debt to climb. Right? They want a 1-year delay of the Affordable Care Act, which is, if you want an example of propaganda, ladies and gentlemen, look at the term Affordable Care Act. Look at the name they gave it. Have you ever known any organization other than government who names something different than what it actually is, makes it sound so wonderful, and it is so poisonous to you? It's like taking cyanide and renaming it sugar. They want a 1-year delay on Obamacare, the Unaffordable Care Act. They want tax reform. They want the Keystone XL pipeline begun construction. Obama is destroying our nation from within by blocking us from drilling, moving the oil and the tar sands oil and the shale oil. He's doing this willingly, folks. Don't you get it? It's willful. He told us, under my administration, utility rates, especially electric rates, will necessarily skyrocket. That's his words, not mine. And now he's accomplishing it. He just blocked us from using coal. He's going to literally shut down dozens upon dozens of coal-fired power plants. Well, guess what? If there are less power plants making electricity, your prices are going to do what? These are basic laws of supply and demand, and it doesn't matter what administration is in office or what their political leanings are. These are the laws of physics. Drop a rock and gravity will pull it to the ground every time. They want an overhaul of the Dodd-Frank regulations. Now, look, this Dodd-Frank thing was only passed a couple of years ago, and it is the Obamacare of financial and banking rules. I don't want an overhaul of it. I want a complete repeal of Dodd-Frank. Anything that came out of Chris Dodd and Mr. Frank, please. They want more offshore oil drilling. Why are we begging the president to be energy independent? Is this a monarchy? Really? Why do we have to beg scumbags like Harry Reid? Why do we have to fall on our knees before that archaic, shadowy, evil man? Why must we commit treason against ourselves to the likes of Barack Obama to be an energy independent nation, which our Congress has been promising us for the last 75 years? We don't need government's permission, especially when the government has your destruction as its goal. They want means testing for Medicare. Well, no kidding. If you're a multimillionaire, why are you getting Medicare? If you are retiring and you have millions and millions upon of dollars in assets, to be honest with you, the truth is, you shouldn't have to be excluded. You should be recusing yourself as a patriotic American and saying, you know what, that's the least I can do for my country. The same country that allowed me to earn millions and sock it away for this time now requires that I give a little bit back. Stop being so damn greedy. Shouldn't have to means test you. You should means test yourself. They want to suspend the Environmental Protection Agency's efforts to regulate carbon emissions. Look, this concept of global warming is shot so full of holes, it makes Bonnie and Clyde look like they're intact. Enough nonsense. We've had enough. There is no global warming empirical documentation and evidence, not to mention the fact that until you have a better solution, shut the hell up and back off and leave us alone. You don't have a solution in solar. You don't have a solution in wind. You don't have a solution in alternative energy. You don't have a solution in nuclear. So just leave us alone. Focus your effort and your energy on creating an alternative that actually works and is self-sustaining and no longer needs subsidies from taxpayers. Then and only then can we have a discussion about what you should regulate about fossil fuel and coal and oil and everything else. But until then, back off. And they want a repeal of the Public Health Trust Fund. Public Health Trust Fund. You know, first of all, understand with Washington, there is no such thing as a trust fund because they have no trust. Everything that you put into a specialized trust fund gets stolen. So Dan Pfeiffer comes out and he's comparing Republicans to arsonists, hostage takers, and suicide bombers. Listen to his words. What we're not for is negotiating with people with a bomb strapped to their chest. We're not going to do that. You see, what they're doing is they are equating They are equating open negotiation and dialogue, open discussion that opposes their viewpoints with terrorism. This is a tactic that is Marxist and fascist in its very, very nature. George Orwell told us the most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. Now, if thoughts corrupt language, language can corrupt thought. Our thoughts are being corrupted. We are being given an injection of a numbing material. You are being acclimated. The temperature in the pot is being raised. But it's all done in graduated increments so that you don't notice that suddenly you've been thrown into a pot of boiling water. Kennedy said to us, no matter how big the lie, if you repeat it often enough, the masses will regard it as the truth. Listen, we are being indoctrinated. And this kind of talk from a government official is inexcusable, and it is a betrayal of the United States principles, the concepts, the foundational ideals of this nation. Because somebody wants to talk and have an open conversation and a realistic discussion and a dialogue about whether or not Barack Obama and Obamacare and all of these financial, a $17 trillion debt that they want to grow by another $4 trillion, because you want to have an open discussion about that, suddenly you're a terrorist who's got a bomb strapped to his chest? Really? You're an arsonist, a hostage taker, and a suicide bomber? They're his words, not mine. And I'm going to tell you something. This is exactly how the Russians demonized the wealthy, the bourgeois. You know what bourgeois means? It's the middle class. Workers unite. Kill the bourgeois. They're the cause of all of our problems. They're the ones, those shopkeepers, those owners of businesses. Let's take their businesses away and we'll run it as a communal group and everybody will share in the profits and benefits. It's them Jews. They're the ones who have been robbing our country of power and money. Let's go out and get all them Jews. Mach schnell. Statists would like to share everything except one thing: their power. The altruistic collectivist idea is a line they feed you but do not believe in themselves. It's all great to be altruistic and have this collectivist concept as long as they're at the top making the decisions. And what they do is they demonize the opposition, whomever that may be. Listen, if you don't believe what I'm telling you, recognize how the United States of America and the media and the Ministry of Propaganda have been demonizing nations that they want to go to war with. We did it in Vietnam. We did it in World War II. We did it in World War I. We did it in Korea. We did it in Afghanistan. We did it in Iraq. We're doing it now to Iran. You see, It's all about propaganda. It's all about molding your thinking. This is Cass Sunstein's nudge principle put into application. Don't be mistaken or fooled for a moment about Cass Sunstein. I've talked to you before about his nudge concept, to nudge people into societal behavioral change. That's nothing more, ladies and gentlemen, than the propaganda that Goebbels used with the Nazis. It's nothing more than the propaganda that was used by Mao in China and Stalin in Russia and Lenin and Trotsky. It's the same exact thing. He's just not calling it propaganda. But nudge is propaganda, equals misrepresentation and lies told often enough and loud enough, and people begin to believe it. That's exactly what it is. The art of propaganda is in full swing. If you don't know it, and I did an entire show about it, if you're not aware of it, the Smith-Mundt Act was repealed months ago, and the domestic United States is again subjected to government-issued propaganda by law. Since 1948, that sat on the books that said, you may not use government-sponsored propaganda against the United States, the people of the United States of America. It came about right after World War II. And it was put in place for a very clear reason. It was a prohibition against government using propaganda, because we all know how dangerous it can be. But in the age of Obama, in the era of Obama, propaganda is king. Propaganda used against a people in a Republican democracy, in a Republican form of government, is the equivalent of a gun in the hands of a totalitarian state. Mark my words, you are being laden down, buttered over every day. The layers are enveloping you, and you will be suffocated by it. We no longer know what is truth and what is government-sponsored fiction, because the Smith-Mundt action has been taken and the law has been pulled. So we are being fooled every single day. We have absolutely no idea when. We don't know what stories are true. We don't know which ones are government fiction written by writers that are no different than writers in Hollywood. They come up with this fantasy, put it down on paper, and they feed it to you. In order to, what? Nudge you. Let me read you something from a guy named Lysander Spooner. Lysander made a very clear statement that I find extraordinarily valuable. Here's what he said. Those who are capable of tyranny are capable of perjury and lies to sustain it. Did you hear that? Those capable of tyranny are capable of perjury and lies to sustain it, also to build it. You see, we are so anesthetized. We have been anesthetized. We are numb from what we have already been given. If they continue to feed us more anesthesia, our lungs will stop being able to function. Our heart will give out. You're on a table and you are being given anesthesia. But the doctor who's holding on to the switch of the anesthesia, the dial, he's not trustworthy. The problem that we've got right now is that we have descended and fallen away from the critical thinking that enables us to recognize misrepresentation and lies and the hurting, if you will, when we hear it. And the reason we don't is because it's not taught in our schools anymore. You notice that they never want you to think critically. Ask your children when they come home. Ask them to read something. I want you to go do an exercise. I want you to take an article in a paper, and I want you to read it yourself, and I want you to use your best critical thinking skills and read one that comes from the opposite side of the political sphere and one that agrees with you. And then I want you to read them both, and I want you to sit down and do an exercise yourself and express to yourself in writing how this is misleading you. And by the way, both sides are guilty of it. Your job as a critical thinker is to understand where you're being manipulated and how. Then I want you to give it to one of your teenagers who's going to school. And I want you to have them do the same exercise. Critical thinking skills are not being taught in schools. They don't want kids and children to be critical thinkers because it's like the old days of slavery. If you let the slave learn how to read, suddenly you've lost control, and he might start thinking for himself. And we can't have that now, can we? I mean, we can't have a slave who thinks for themselves and then might be able to own firearms. Those two concepts, those two issues are the enemy of tyranny. Critical thought and the ability to defend yourself and your nation. Why do you think both are under such assault? Why? Those are the two areas that are under the heaviest level of assault. The enemy is pouring at you in waves. They are for a reason. If they can defeat your ability to think critically, if they can effectively block you or numb you down to the point where you are no longer using your critical thinking skills, with Dancing with the Stars and the tabloids and the interest in Miley Cyrus and who she's rubbing her rear end against, don't you see? It's taking you away from the study of what's happening around you. Don't think for yourself. Just be entertained. Trust us. It's all okay. We've got your best interest at heart. Really, we do. Anytime you hear that, that's like saying to me, I'm a lawyer. Trust me. And the red flags start flying all over the play. Folks, please be aware of what's going on around you. Use your critical thinking skill. I'll tell you what, I'm actually thinking about putting together a critical thinking class and streaming it over video. If that's something that you'd like to see, do me a favor and send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. Send me an email and just put the subject line critical thinking class. I'd like to see if there's enough people that would be interested to take that. We're going to take, we're not going to take a break. We're wrapping for the day. Please find us on americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and youtube.com/America's Voice Now. if you can make it tomorrow, you certainly welcome to come down to the ham radio class. That'll be held in West Plains. Number to call for that is 372-1135, 417-372-1135. This is your last chance on this class. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait about 10 weeks to take another one. We'll see you tomorrow or Monday.